Want to attract and convert more leads? Want to learn how digital PR, branding, and SEO can establish and build your brand identity? Welcome to the Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkify podcast. We answer these questions and help you ramp up your brand visibility and credibility. Let's cut through the noise and make your business the talk of the town. We're your hosts, Nick and Chris. Let's get this show on the road.
From the god of SEO blog to Fortune 500 company consulting, Charles Floate has been ingrained in the SEO industry since he was basically in nappies. Charles has successfully scaled and sold multiple online businesses, including agencies, portfolio websites, SaaS tools, and he also manages his family's $70 million e-com business. While seemingly he has his fingers in many pies, Charles is synonymous with SEO testing and being at the forefront of a rapidly changing industry. I was fortunate enough to see him speak at his Dubai AI conference, and myself and Nick have also seen him speak on multiple occasions. His latest ventures include the wildly successful Cuppa, an AI content tool, and SEO.Careers. Finally, the somewhat dazzling output and training from a man not yet in his 30s is beautifully collated under one roof at charlesfloattraining.com. Ladies and gentlemen, a truly inspirational entrepreneur, Mr. Charles Floate.
Wow, what an introduction. I can't really say anything. I'm a bit lost for words there. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate you guys for having me as well there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Okay, so Charles, you jumped into the world of SEO at 12 years old. Can you take us back to those early days?
Yeah, so I actually knew about SEO probably since I was like 9 or 10. So when YouTube first came out, I think I was about 8 years old or 9 years old, and I was immediately obsessed with it. I think I was with one of the first million users to sign up for YouTube. I remember my account, it used to have like your user ID, and it was definitely within the first million. But I was absolutely obsessed with it. I had dozens of channels that I would just create new accounts all day long for all sorts of things. And I'd try and make videos. Started off with literally like Windows Movie Maker back in the day. And then obviously very quickly progressed to like cracked versions of like Sony Vegas and all this crazy stuff that was going on back in the day. And I really just fell in love with YouTube. And that's when, and I think a lot of people did, and it's kind of become more of a common dream now amongst people of that age and amongst kids and stuff. But at the time, it was very not ordinary, right? And my mom was very concerned that I was posting videos online when I was 9 or 10 years old and like interacting with all these strangers and stuff, right? But I started getting a decent payday, and it wasn't actually from YouTube or the AdSense or anything. It was when I started figuring out graphic design, and I was using GIMP and like very small versions of Photoshop and stuff, like limited trials and stuff that I could get my hands on. And I would sell graphics to streamers on Twitch. And so I'd stream overlays and banners and things like that. And one of them basically said, I really need it for this new channel that I've created that I'm doing for SEO videos. And I was like, what the hell is SEO? And he gave me this whole, spiel about like, you need it to rank videos and getting views and searches and subscribers and money and all this kind of stuff. And he was using it to like rank for affiliate products from ClickBank and this just blew my mind, all of this kind of information. And so I started going on forums and I started building kind of a community and mentors around me. And that's where I met Todd Foster, who is now the owner of Canada's second biggest digital marketing agency. And he really gave me an insight into making your own websites. And we started doing made for AdSense sites and affiliate sites and all of that kind of stuff. And that's really what took me off and kicked off my career from those days.
So you got addicted to SEO then early on. Do you still have that same passion for an industry that's been such a huge part of your life? Yeah,
so I can't say that I do, to be honest. Like I don't have, if I'm very honest, like those days were kind of, those days are gone, right? Like they were the glory days, if anything, because that obsession with learning and everything is so new and being at the forefront of it. And there wasn't like, right now there's dozens and dozens of big blogs and YouTube channels and courses and all this stuff in SEO. There was none of that right? We had like Moz Whiteboard Fridays, and they were phenomenal back in the day. They were like revolutionary and game changing for kind of the SEO community. And those were just basic things that Rand was kind of talking about, right? Like internal linking and meta descriptions and things. But at the time, it felt like it was revolutionary and game changing. And I feel like those days are kind of gone. And that's because it's that new frontier kind of thing where we just don't have that anymore. But with AI, I am starting to feel that again, because again, it is, you feel like you're at the forefront of something, at this new start of things, and kind of on the precipice of huge change. And bear in mind that when I first really started in SEO in 2008, 2009, the SEO industry just clocked in at $1 billion in annual spend for the whole of the industry. And within 10 years of me being inside the industry, it went to $50 billion in annual spend, and then went to like 80, and now it's at $100 billion annual spend. So within a decade, the industry effectively 50x grew in size. So that kind of rapid change and growth is similar now to how AI feels and experiences in terms of that rapid growth, but at even a bigger scale, because SEO is limited in its kind of scope and depth, whereas AI could potentially infiltrate every part of society and humanity and industry, right, and on every level. So the kind of scalability and new frontier is way bigger with AI. I'm just not that 16, 15-year-old kid anymore, unfortunately. So, but it feels there are kind of glimpses of that again in doing this AI work now.
Well, on the topic of AI, there's been a lot of buzz, obviously, about AI shaking up the search rankings. What have you noticed from your testing grounds about AI's real impact on the SERPs?
Yeah, so in reality, it depends on the SERP, right? So a lot of SERPs just haven't been hit at all, really, and affected by AI content. Things like law firms and stuff, it's just too difficult to get expertise in an AI content level. And then also mix that with, locality and things like that, where you need to be ranking for, New York lawyers or law firm New York or things like that. You need to have such a mixed level of expertise that the content just isn't good enough for certain niches. That being said, certain websites and certain players have massively disrupted a lot of SERPs and a lot of keywords, a lot of niches. Even things like Quora, when they added in their kind of AI-powered question and answers, that massively disrupted a lot of SERPs for a lot of people, and they started taking keywords from a lot of people. And then there's various publishers that have either admitted to and have been completely upfront and transparent about it, or most of them haven't admitted to it and have just slightly updated their publishing policy and have really started amping up their publishing rate. But because they're DR 80s and 90s, it doesn't really matter, and they get away with it anyway. Google doesn't really have the ability to check the two. And if they are using, and this is what they should be doing as well, if they are using an AI that is trained or fine-tuned on all of their existing content, a lot of the time, the new content that the AI creates is 80 to 90% as good as the old content anyway, and that is fair enough and perfectly good enough to be able to rank, especially on a DR 80, 90 website, right?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because do you feel as though that everything else will catch up? So like local SEO for law firms, do you think eventually AI is just going to dominate everything with SGE, or do you think there'll still be a level playing field in certain areas for SEOs to play and win?
I think if we kind of take it outside of even SEO, I think AI is going to disrupt everything. And I think that it's a bit of a lie, and like a corporate lie, to be honest, about the large companies like Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, all of these, even Meta and things, right? They're saying that AI is going to improve people and it's going to create jobs and it's going to assist people and this sort of stuff. In reality, it's not doing that already. It's taking people's jobs from people already. It's taking jobs from writers. And if you look at the recent layoffs from tech firms, they're blaming it on over hiring in the pandemic. But we're 3 years on from the pandemic now, and that's just nonsense. In my opinion, what's happened and what seemingly is happening in playing out in reality is that these large corporate firms and tech firms are thinking that because AI is so now superseded into everyday work life, and that they have got access to far better AI models and compute and all of this stuff that makes the output far better than we have got commercial access to inside of these internal firms, that they don't need 5 software engineers anymore. They need one running 5 different agents that are doing the same job anyway. So, and that's the inevitability, and they're preparing for it. If anything, they're actually doing it a lot of the time now. So that's why you're seeing, I think it's 250,000 tech layoffs already this year so far. And I think that is a kind of a reality check for a lot of people that's actually AI, and it's not this kind of other mythology about politics and the pandemic and things like that. And that is a perfect example of what will happen with the SEO industry as well, because most players won't be able to catch up, they won't be able to adapt, they won't be savvy enough, and they'll get left behind by something along the lines, and it will be shocking. That's the thing, right? It's like how we were shocked by ChatGPT, we were shocked by Sora, we were shocked by Suno, right? We were shocked by all of these revelations. That's going to happen more and more frequently, and that's going to happen to individual businesses that is going to massively affect them.
And to speak to that, you, as an industry, we often relate SEO to just be synonymous with Google, but you've publicly spoken a number of times now saying that we need to shift our focus to solely thinking of SEO as being a Google play and SEO on other platforms. So do you see a seismic shift away from Google and people more proactively searching on social media platforms like TikTok, Insta, or using AI platforms like Perplexity? And what role do you think SEO will play in ranking content on platforms outside of Google?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily see Google itself dying out. I think that what's happened and what is happening is that certain niches have been massively taken away from Google. So if you think of things like travel and things like makeup tutorials and even music and things like that, a lot of them have been taken away from Google. Even when it's things like searching for lyrics, it might be now on YouTube, which is a Google platform, but a lot of these searches have been taken away by TikTok. They've been taken away by Amazon search. They've been taken away by other search engines that aren't necessarily primary search engine functions, but they're search engines of other platforms. And that's quite damaging to Google's business, because those clicks are way, way, way more profitable to Google than they are to these other companies. So they need to be, or they are being proactive, or they think they're being proactive against this kind of stealing away by implementing these AI and doing Gemini and doing all these additional things and stuff. But in reality, it seems like they're just one step behind on everything. And it's because they're trying to play catch up and being reactive instead of being proactive, which is a bit of a shame when actually Google are the ones that created all this technology in the first place. But all of those people that created that technology have now left because of internal politics and decisions. And if you look at all of the other big startups in AI right now, 90% of them are ran by ex-Google employees.
I want to ask about the e-com space specifically. So I know you have family business in e-com, and I think you've worked in e-com for quite a long time. What do you see happening in the e-com space? What do you think is going to be the future? I know a lot of people are talking about TikTok as a form of discovery for e-com. What do you see happening in that space?
Yeah, so again, it's dependent on your demographic, right? So if your demographic is people under 18, then Google is probably 4th or 5th on the list right now in terms of actual market share and ability to drive sales and things. It's probably TikTok, Amazon, even YouTube reviews and things like that are really driving. Even things like Instagram are actually really powerful and things in a lot of niches for driving traffic and sales, especially in e-com. And you can still do the shop products features and like sponsored products and things on Instagram, which is really powerful for brand marketing and things on top of it. So I think that it's very demographic dependent on if it will be taking search away from Google, especially in e-commerce, and depending on where you want to be spending your time and investments and things. But I think with e-commerce anyway, there's just so many opportunities outside of SEO that SEO shouldn't really be one of your primary goals unless you can fundamentally say that the majority of sales are coming through this, which is Google search. And generally speaking, that tends to be more high ticket items, because most people are doing research in Google search for high ticket things. They're shopping around, they're trying to find the right deals and things. And that's pretty difficult to do on other platforms. So generally speaking, things like it's a really random niche, but ride along lawnmowers generally sell only on Google and Amazon. They don't really sell on anywhere else. They sell on eBay occasionally and things like that, but they're generally classifieds. They're not actual e-commerce listings. So it's very niche and demographic dependent, and Google's still very powerful, but it has lost a lot of its edge. And I think that the future of Google in relation to e-commerce is probably going to be SGE. And SGE seems to be the one way they're monetizing SGE is with sponsored products, which is going to be, again, just a form of PPC anyway. So,
I've been watching a lot of Shark Tank in recent months. I came across a way to watch all of these episodes. So it's like the US equivalent of the British Dragon's Den. I found 15 years worth of episodes, and it's really interesting when you go back to the early episodes and you see how these e-com DTC brands have like generated their sales. It started off in the early days with like paid Google ads, and it just gradually went to TikTok. You can just see that transition to the shift in how people are acquiring customers. It's crazy. You seem to be hedging your bets, Charles, lately with your number of different projects with the likes of Cuppa, SEO.Careers, etc. Where do you see yourself doubling down in the coming months?
Yeah, so I've been mostly hedging my bets because I'm trying to kind of transition from being a single focused entrepreneur to being more of an investor style multipreneur. And that means that I have tried to create businesses that overlap pretty well with each other. So with Cuppa, for example, I can promote Cuppa through my training business, through the Charles Floate training business. With the recruitment agency, any leftover really highly good candidate talent, we can potentially funnel into our other SEO businesses and things, right? With the link agency, we can sell links through the training, and we can sell links through Cuppa and stuff as well. So it all overlaps, and it's James Dooley always says it's shouldering niches, right? That you can always kind of have these businesses. And it means that whenever you acquire another company in the same space, you can automatically add additional value to that company by having all of the other sources of traffic, revenue, and customers coming straight from the other businesses, right? So I've always tried to position myself anyway to see where I can have the most amount of shouldering niches as well as the most amount of potential exit capital. So I've found that a lot of businesses like agencies are pretty hard to sell. And unless you go and start working for the company that you're selling it to for like 3 years, maybe in some cases 5 years, which is just insane to me that people would work for themselves for 10 years building an agency just to sell it to somebody else, to work for somebody else for 5 more years. Like that is just mind blowing. So I always try again to build businesses that I can sell easily. And that's generally speaking SaaS or high profit businesses. And recruitment was a perfect example of that because there's so many other recruitment companies that would acquire us just based on our talent pool and our client list and things like that and case studies and stuff anyway. And the fact that we're in a niche where there's very limited competition. There's basically one other company that does SEO recruitment and digital marketing recruitment, and they have got no prior experience in recruitment, whereas I partnered with somebody who's got 13 years of experience in the game and previously created Nokia's entire AI team. So he's just been phenomenal immediately coming in, and everybody who I've put him in front of has just been amazingly impressed by his ability to deliver. So again, I'm also trying to find people to partner with that are very complementary to my skills. Because I've always said that I'm a very good SEO, but I'm not a very good CEO. So I want to try and find good CEOs who can run the company, do the day-to-day, but I can just funnel the marketing and kind of brand power and knowledge into the business and operations and and grow it and then sell them for hopefully millions of dollars, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. Can I ask what other industries are you in?
Yeah, so I'm in a lot of industries, depending on if you look at site portfolio and everything, right? In terms of site portfolio, I do a lot of foreign niches. So it's not Google, it's not English SEO. It's generally, and I don't speak any of the languages as well. I tend to just
the
hire
language
a
of
local
love.
writer. Well, the language of love and like a couple computer languages and things and stuff. But that's debatable if they're included. But yeah, in general, I try to make sure that it's just as much value building as possible, basically.
Okay, well, I have to ask because there's a lot of talk around this, but are niche sites dead?
Yes and no, basically. So there's so I've said for a long time now that the niche site community has been approaching SEO wrong. And I got a lot of flack for it a couple of years ago when I made a couple of videos basically calling everybody out. And shocker, all of those people are either left SEO or are currently experiencing very, very poor results with their websites, or even manual penalties on their sites and things, right? Just completely wiped out the game. Whereas all of our assets and all of our sites and things, shocker, are flying up the SERPs. And generally speaking, that's because I saw what was coming from Google, and I have understood, because of my experience in SEO, that generally Google's updates are trend oriented, and that when they are doing something, they're going to keep doing that same thing over and over again, and they double down on things over and over and over again with updates. And so you see trends over and over again with updates. So I saw authority just trending upwards and upwards. I saw UGC coming. I saw Parasite coming. I saw all of these things coming because I was in the SERPs testing things. And I saw that the style that a lot of these people were doing in relation to their blogs was inevitably going to get destroyed. And it did, right? And I was telling people for ages, but people just wrote me off as a bit of a hater and stuff. Probably because I generally also don't have the best way of telling people sometimes. But they probably should have listened in hindsight for a lot of people and stuff. And I think that they could have at least diversified what they were doing anyway and hedged their bets a bit better, because too many people were putting all of their eggs in one basket. And that's not a good idea with SEO anyway, because of things like penalties and algorithm updates and all this stuff that is too volatile for you to, you could be making 100K a month from one website, but that website could get destroyed tomorrow, get a manual penalty, and now you're making $100 a month, right? So it's not a risk adverse enough strategy, and people were acting like niche sites were.
Can you explain what that strategy was?
Yeah, so essentially it was a blogging for RPM strategy. So it's not even anything new, right? Like when I first started doing SEO 15 years ago, we were doing made for AdSense sites, which was essentially the exact same thing people are still doing now and expecting it to work, which all you're doing is creating niche topical blogs that Google likes because you're creating content all on the same topic. So you're deeming yourself as an expert on that topic. And then you're trying to generate as much traffic as you can to those pages, which have ads on them, and those ads generate you money, right? And ideally you want to be in niches that have got a high RPM. So per 1,000 page views, you're getting paid, $20 to $100 per 1,000 page views. And all people do then is, once the site ranks and once they've got a bit of a following and it's going and they're making money from those ads, is they just pump content based on keyword research, trying to get as much content out as possible. But there's multiple flaws with this strategy across the board, and even just from a base kind of SEO and foundational level. But when it comes to what Google were moving towards with their algorithm updates, that just made it a inevitable strategy to be killed off, basically. That being said, there is some evidence that you can still build new sites now, and that they won't get picked up by like helpful content classifier and things like that. And you could do a similar strategy, but there is still glaring holes, like I said, in the foundational elements. Like they weren't doing internal linking, they weren't doing schema, they weren't doing image optimization, they weren't doing load time optimization, they weren't doing ad positioning, they weren't using good ad networks. A lot of people were using Ezoic, which was just trash, and Ezoic's leadership team were actively lying on Twitter to everybody, saying, oh no, and I was like, how can people read this and not understand? Because they were saying that adding Ezoic to your website makes your website faster. And I'm like, what on what planet does adding ad scripts, right? Adding scripts to your website on any planet make it faster, right? That's just not going to happen. Like the fundamentals of the internet here make that not possible. Yeah, well, even so, it's what a lot of it's doing as well is just interacting with other elements on your site, which end up breaking other elements on your site and things like that. There's all of this stuff that's going on. I'm not saying necessarily that Sowing are a trash company. I'm just saying that what they've been saying is not accurate at all, and that a lot of their ad scripts from an SEO perspective are quite damaging because they're adding a lot of load time, they're adding a lot of scripts, they're a lot of JavaScript, which Google hates. It's all of this stuff which is just negative signals to Google, and Google itself favor their own platforms. So AdSense is just going to get favored over Sowing anyway. But you're going to earn less money. But even then, that's up for debate now because a lot of people are saying that they're making more money on AdSense than Sowing now. So,
for two parts of this question. Firstly, do you think that Google is identified like a pattern in these sorts of niche sites as a way to easily get rid of these pages from their index? Same sort of theme, same strategy, low difficulty keywords, not perfectly related in like topical maps, monetized by ads. There seems to be like a pattern which is easily identifiable. And secondly, what are your thoughts on this like doorway page theory that Kyle Roof's been talking about, Kasra Dash, where Google is possibly looking at sites and favoring those where the final part of the customer journey ends on site, as opposed to like an affiliate site or even an ad site where the ad would be viewed as like an external link, and he's taking the customer away from that website.
In terms of the first part of the question, because of the way that Google changed the algorithm to have the helpful content classifier, right? Most people say it's the HCU, but actually I think it should be the HCC because it's a helpful content classifier. It's not the update. And the classifier went way beyond just that one September update because it was still rolled into the March update and there was other effects in the November update last year and all sorts of things. So it should be the HCC really. That's what we should be talking about. And from our understanding, Google trained the classifier on quality rater guidelines. And the guidelines are, again, very, very confusing because they're not actually the guidelines. It's data from the quality raters, so manual people clicking a matrix. So it's a score. And this score is literally 1 to 10. It will say like design, aesthetic, linking, spam signals, all of this stuff that they're kind of rating. And as a result of that, the training data is then pulled in and kind of trained on this. The problem is that if you are rating pages, that some pages are going to just inevitably be better quality anyway from a matrix perspective. For example, if you're looking at a services page, in general, a services page is going to be a lot less, and I'm trying to think of the word here, but it's up for debate when two people are having differing opinions, but it's going to be a lot less up for debate on if that page is good from a service page perspective than if a blog post is good.
So you mentioned SGE earlier. So I wanted to ask about that. How do you see that taking shape? There's a lot of debate whether that's actually going to be impactful or not. And then specifically for e-com, what do you think the impact will be for e-com stores?
Yeah, so I think from a impact perspective, people are lying to themselves if they think that a gigantic AI overview primary position in the SERP as soon as you load it isn't going to take away clicks and value and things, isn't going to increase zero-click searches. 100% it is. It's just when will it roll out, how deep it will roll out, et cetera, et cetera. So far, from our testing, it rolls out for a lot of keywords. The difference is that if it rolls out automatically or if it rolls out with the button that says generate. So a lot of keywords, it just rolls out automatically. But some keywords it's not too fond of. For example, it's not too fond of Joseph Stalin, obviously, right? So if you Google Joseph Stalin, it will come up with do you want to generate an overview of this? Because it doesn't want to automatically generate it for you because it's kind of a controversial keyword. And then some keywords, and so far the only niche that we found that it doesn't show at all is tax. So anything, if you try and put tax code, any specific country and tax in, it will not even give you an option to generate SGE. It won't show anything in relation to SGE on there. But that's seemingly the only niche so far that we can find that it hasn't rolled out for. So some good news for accountants, basically bad news for everybody else though. I do think that when it does roll out, it will massively change people's fundamental approach to SEO though, because a lot of the keywords, it's going to be a consensus of the SERP. It's not going to be one page anymore, which means that there's going to be a lot more investment, in my opinion, in additional site acquisitions. So like what SEMrush is doing now with Backlink Co and Traffic Think Tank and all these other sites, that's going to be a very, very clever strategy come SGE rollout, because when you Google link building tips or something, 3 of the top 10 sites are now going to be SEMrush property. So it's going to be a lot higher likelihood that they're going to be recommending SEMrush or talking about SEMrush tools in SGE than Ahrefs going forward. But in reality, is SEMrush better than Ahrefs? Probably not, right? At the moment, Ahrefs is actually the better tool, but because of what SEMrush are doing, it's going to be future-proofing them against kind of the marketing differences when SGE does roll out. And I think that's what's going to be very interesting, is both from a site acquisition perspective and a parasite SEO perspective, because you can do the same kind of thing of controlling multiple positions in the SERP using parasite SEO as well.
So how can e-commerce brands be thinking about that? What should they be thinking about for the strategy?
Yeah, so with e-commerce brands, by far the quickest strategy I can find is looking at a SERP that you're wanting to come up with. You know, for example, you might be Dyson and you're trying to be the number 1 for best hairdryer or something along those lines, right? So far from what we can see is you reach out to the current sites that are ranking in the top 10 and you just pay them to be listed number 1. And then what happens is FG changes the listings to be you number 1 because you're now the consensus across the board. Obviously, going even deeper than that, you could do the site acquisitions, go and acquire blogs and start ranking them and doing parasite pages and all that kind of stuff on top of it. But immediate quick value, you can just go and pay bloggers that are already there, already ranking, to essentially change SGE for you. And bear in mind that SGE is cached for a lot of keywords, right? So unless you're doing a new keyword, most SGE results are now cached to save Google processing power. So that it's not actually generating a new AI snippet every single time. It will just generate it once per week from our testing. It's not even daily, it's a weekly cache, which is quite a long time for Google. But again, it's to save on processing power, because even doing it daily versus weekly is 7 times the amount of processing power for this AI generation, which is a lot of money when you're in a lot of compute at the moment. And they'd rather spend that time and compute and money on training new models and improving their AI technologies than they would be kind of generating this expensive SGE result. But Microsoft and OpenAI have forced them into this. They forced their hand in. Google panicked and hit the button.
Interesting. Okay, Charles, you have somewhat of a reputation on Twitter X for being a Nostradamus of some sorts with your predictions. So before I get into your actual predictions, I want to know, what has been your biggest SEO prediction fail in recent years? So what did you actually get completely wrong?
Yeah, so there's been probably a lot, but the 2 biggest was that I was doing SEO stream in London, and I was doing a presentation where I was basically saying, hey, look, this tool I think is it's months out, maybe a year or 2 out from being available. But I think once it's available, it's going to change the industry. It's going to be amazing. And when I finished the presentation and looked at my phone, they'd released the tool. So I thought, this is game changing, but it's like 2 years away, right? And I just told everyone, don't expect this. It's not coming, guys. But it's going to be game changing.
What was it?
And then I was getting back. It was AutoGen Studio by Microsoft, right? Which is basically where you could have multiple agents and things and stuff and control them and give them interactable tasks and things to do. Which again, it is game changing technology. But I thought it was ages away, and it released like the same time as I was delivering my presentation. And loads of people in the chat were just like, "Hey, it's out and available now." And I was like, "Oh, great."
Okay, cool. Right. So putting your little fail behind us, predictions for the coming months and years, maybe where you see links playing a role as well would be interesting. And what you think the landscape will look like.
Yeah, so I see Google doubling down on the trends and stuff that they have in their algorithm updates. And I see that they're going to continue down the path of authority and UGC and all of this kind of stuff. And that's probably, if they say they're doing it, generally they're going to follow through with that. And that's the trend that is moving towards. So I see people winning who are focusing on that, right? And I also saw a tweet from Gary Illis. So he was speaking at a conference 2 days ago, and he basically said that Parasite SEO, Google has already targeted it in the February update and in the March spam update, and that it's no longer a concern, which, if you know, it definitely is still a concern. So that's actually great news for us.
He also said in the last day or so that Google now almost doesn't need links at all in order to rank pages. And then he quickly backtracked and was saying that's it for them to discover pages as opposed to rank pages.
Yeah. So Gary actually is a fairly interesting guy. Like, if you go back and listen to some of his presentations and some of his Q&As from 5 or 6 years ago, they're really insightful. And like, he's one of the few kind of spokespeople for Google that has got a very good understanding of the technology and where the algorithm has progressed. And he's been I think he's worked at Google for something like 17 years now or something. So he's actually been in the search team, in the search quality team for that entire time. And he's seen all of the people come and go and the different engineers and the different takes and things. So he's actually a lot more pessimistic about the search engine than most of the other engineers. Right, most of the other engineers will just write it off and say, "Oh no, the algorithm's perfect. It's like the most amazing algorithm on the planet." Blah blah, this kind of stuff, right? Which, if you're in the SERPs, you know is definitely not the case. Gary will be honest. He'll be more like, "No, it's not. You know, they're spending more on their ad algorithms than they are on the search algorithms. They're doing all this X, Y, and Z, right? Etc." And I've liked a lot of his opinions. I think that a lot of people take what he says out of context, which is the exact thing that happened with that statement. He said that, like you just said, he said that Google relies a lot less on links to discover new pages, but people remove the last 3 words and suddenly it changes the entire narrative, right? But people do that in SEO to fit their narrative, which is dangerous, right? Because people are trying to kind of reinforce their own opinion of SEO and their own kind of reading into SEO, because too many people in SEO read into SEO and don't actually read what the SERP is showing you and what's going on in the SERPs and things, right? And so they have kind of a slanted opinion and they just want to look for things that reinforce that opinion. And that's where you see these things come up over and over again.
So what do you think about links? Are they still important today? Are they still going to be important in the future? There's been, outside of that comment, there's been a lot of big names in the SEO space who've said that the future of link building is brand mentions, that links aren't going to be important. What do you think about that, links in the future?
Yeah, so I think the brand mention stuff is slight nonsense, just because of Google, especially in the last few years, has shown that actually it's trying to use less processing resources and less kind of crawling resource and less compute, and trying to discover non-linked brand mentions and things to every website and associate them with entities and things like that is way more processing power than just relying on links and stuff. So I don't think that fully fits the narrative of, again, where Google is moving towards and what Google has shown, mixed with the fact that AI content has massively devalued content signals in Google, because Google has seen that suddenly overnight there's 10x the amount of content that an individual can produce or that is producing on average across the internet, and suddenly it's very difficult to even crawl and index, or we have massive index bloat, massive crawl bloat, all of this kind of stuff going on and things. So they just have to devalue the prioritization on content signals, just in the sense that they're reducing processing and compute spend, because they're spending less time looking for specific signals and factors and things in this content that, again, is just mass produced very cheaply from an AI perspective. There's also some narrative that one piece of content could be that costs 4 cents now to generate with OpenAI could actually end up costing Google more in processing resources and stuff over the course of however long and all this and stuff, right? If you're making that page megabytes in resource and things, right? So in general, I like to think that links have always been the go-to ranking factor and that they have just continued to be the dominant ranking factor. But people associate links as like page level links and that's it, right? But in reality, a lot of links being the number one factor is just that root authority and domain authority is such a ranking factor that it is probably at this point the be all and end all. And that's why Parasite SEO and that's why all of these large publications and stuff have been smashing it, is that authority and root authority has become such a signal. And it's become such a signal, A, because of AI content and content signals being devalued, and B, because Google is using it as a anti-spam defense mechanism, because they're struggling to deal with spam. So instead of letting any potential spam rank on DR5s, they're just only letting DR85 plus rank in the SERPs, because they know that it's very, very, very unlikely that they're going to be spamming that level of DR sites, right?
Okay, Charles, we were given this like 2-month warning for the sites that were allowing Parasite to sort of clean up their acts. I think in the last couple of days or so, we saw that Forbes has like de-indexed a bunch of their coupon elements of their site or something like this. Do you think that when this 2-month rollout is complete, that these sites have cleaned up their acts and Parasite's gone, or what's your view on that?
So again, to quote Gary Ellis, he said that the site reputation abuse isn't Parasite SEO, actually. It's people are misconstruing the two things, and that Parasite SEO in Google's eyes, generally speaking, is people, spamming LinkedIn polls and Outlook India and stuff like that. It's not the publishers publishing content on their own sites, which is Forbes and things like that, doing site level reputation abuse, and that they're two different things. So the people are kind of conflating the two. And then actually it's probably more likely that Google are just giving warnings out to try and get those sites to clean up their act. And that if they see certain sites haven't cleaned up their act at all, they'll just go and give them manual actions to force action across the industry. And again, it's all propaganda and perception and things. If you hit 5, 10, 15 big websites that have been doing that, suddenly the other 1,000 websites that are doing the exact same thing are kind of shitting the bed a little bit. They're thinking that they're going to be next. And paranoia and fear are a massive thing and a massive game changer for Google, and they've realized that. But the people that kind of get swept under the rug and that Google don't clock onto, and then B, continue to still do the same thing, they're probably going to smash it, and because there's going to be less competition from the other people that do clean up their act and that Google do find out and stuff, right? But again, Google tend to do these kind of punitive actions as one-offs, and it's unlikely that they would continue doing sites that were actually abusing it, which is my point. So those sites that do not get caught up and that do continue are probably still going to thrive, unfortunately, for a lot of smaller sites.
All right, that ties in perfectly to my last question. So any parting advice for site owners who are trying to recover from the Google core updates? What should they focus on for long-term success? Yeah,
so it's very difficult to give people specific advice to what to focus on in terms of, because it's niche dependent. So if you're doing e-commerce or local or whatever, it's dependent. The one consistent throughout everything is internal linking, right? For some reason, people don't focus on internal linking nearly enough as they should do. And it's the one thing that seems to be continually beneficial in every single algorithm update that we have got, because it makes sense. If you're moving link equity and relevancy and semantics between pages and giving Google that ability, it's reducing processing and compute that Google has to do for you. And it's giving additional signals that Google has just reinforced with every single update. And that they're anti-spam, they're anti-AI content, they're all of these things because they're manual and stuff like that. It's really beneficial to spend that time doing that. And we've got a couple clients in consulting, at least, that and this is one annoying thing. Clients tend to listen to me and I'll give them, an action list of 25 things to do. They'll tunnel vision on like 2 or 3 and only do them. And I tell clients, because I can kind of tell when clients are doing this, because they're on the call and they're just asking questions about 2 things and that's it. The rest of it doesn't matter, right? But obviously it does. So when clients tend to do that, I tend to try and at least align them down the path of the one thing you should be focusing on the most is internal linking, because 99% of sites don't do it properly. They either over-optimize or they don't do it at all, or there's some kind of weird middle ground where it's poorly done. And it's going to be the biggest kind of difference maker between competitors if you can get it right.
So you want to make yourself cheap and sexy then for Google?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bingo. Yes.
Charles, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. I hope we can have you on again in 12 months' time to see where we're at. Everything is moving super fast. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch, if they want to learn from you, find out more?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, charlesfloate.com, or you can go to @Charles_SEO on X, and I post daily on on Twitter or X if you want to get daily SEO gold and advice.
All right. Thanks a lot, Charles.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
And that wraps up this episode of Market Movers Building Brands and Links with Linkify. Big thanks to our parent company, Linkifi, the wizards behind turning ambitious businesses into standout brands. Hit up our website at linkifi.io and take the first steps towards brand greatness. Big shout out to Fame for making this podcast possible. Thanks for listening, folks. Stick around for more insights in our next episode. Catch you later.